Good. So we're going to be talking Formula Drift. So
Yes.
while we wait for Ryan to join us, we're going to roll a short video from Formula Drift to get us all warmed up.
Let's go.
21 years amassed of Formula Drift competition, and it all comes down to Irwindale. There is something magical about Irwindale, the House of Drift, where you want to win, and where we'll officially announce a 2024 champion. There could be only one winner, and there could be only one champion. So let's send it.
But don't tell no lie about me, and I won't tell truths about you. Yeah, I'm out the way, yeah, I'm low, okay. Yeah, the island right here is remote, okay. I ain't thinking about no reaper. I'm reaping what I sow, okay. Psst, I see dead people.
Gotta find my joint up on this beach. Selling dope, is you like that? Kicking doors, kicking in doors, is you like that? Young throw, selling lows, is you like that? All 24, young gold, is you like that? From the start, I'm really like stepping in the list, is you like popping on the ball, is you like
What a great video to introduce Ryan. Good morning, Ryan.
Let's go, baby. Yeah, I'm
Let's go.
Nice to have you on again, Brian.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Ryan Sage, good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you. Are you doing the interviewing?
I'm doing the interviewing.
Wow. What a pleasure. What a pleasure.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Ryan. Yeah, so they called me up and I'm like, hey, I'll take it, man. I love the
Love it.
Otani. It's the wrong jersey, but
Yes,
love
well,
the Otani jersey.
I have that up there because that's the second best import from Japan. So
And drifting being the first one. By the
Yeah.
way, 21 seasons, huh?
yeah, I know. It's feel like I should
Congratulations.
be growing weary, but you know, when a season starts, you kind of get that pump again. So
Yeah.
it's been a long time though.
Yeah. Well, a great sizzle reel, by the way. I mean, if that doesn't get you pumped, I don't know what will.
Yeah, that was a really good one. It turned out to be a bit ironic as well because that was kind of a key promotional piece for us in you know, kind of tuning up the audience for Irwindale. And when we produced that, we didn't know you know, with certainty that it was going to be going away. We knew that it was on the horizon. We just didn't know exactly when. And then, you know, subsequently we found out that it was, and we knew about it during the event and all that kind of stuff, but was, you know, told to keep lips quiet, and that turned out to be the last video that we've ever produced there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Irwindale, I mean, we should just jump right into it. I mean, it's the House of Drift. It's where, you and Jim started your basically drifting, journey with D1 back in the day. Um, and then obviously you guys went on to create Formula Drift. I mean, what are your thoughts on the closure of Irwindale? I mean, we've been talking about it for a very, very long time, but I think it's final this time, no?
Yeah, I really, you know, we've been criticized because we've had the last Irwindale for a number of years, and so we kind of stopped doing that, even if it was, you know, rumored to be. But you know, the current leaseholder that got in there had a 5-year deal, and we kind of knew that we were going to be able to ride that out until at least the term, which this was the end of the term. And then, you know, we had some good insight from the city that it was being the probabilities were going to zero that it was going to be around in one way or another. And, you know, there's two parts to it. One is, you know, there's a general kind of like certain motorsport properties and event facilities have kind of been struggling to stay relevant and also to be able to provide, you know, the right kind of revenue intake to justify the location that they're in. But, in particular in Southern California, that's just much more of an extreme because real estate prices are so high out here, and that's a huge piece of valuable property. So it seemed inevitable that something like that was going to occur. We've kind of seen something similar with California Speedway, but Irwindale has done a really good job in making it more than just a motorsports venue. There's a huge amount of commercialization that goes on there with Hollywood and projects and things like that. And they've been able to they would have been able to run it, indefinitely, but I think, the owners, the current owners are not necessarily like motorsports people. So, they're real estate people and they plan on doing something different with it. And there's certainly an interest for the city of Irwindale there. But I think everybody, no matter on what side you come from, whether you are the purchaser of the property and are holding it now, or you're a leaseholder, or you're us, or you're the city of Irwindale, you're kind of bummed to see that landmark go.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really too bad. I mean, I think the internet's been like full of all these speculations of what you guys are going to do. I mean, obviously you don't have to disclose your plans, but what are some of the like crazy ideas that you've heard in regards to your final event next year? Like where should we go for the final event?
Well, I mean, I guess I could say, what we've said, and then also what has been kind of maybe derived from that, and then maybe some independent things. I've heard, stadium, Anaheim Stadium, downtown Los Angeles. I've heard Coda, I've heard Las Vegas. And, what we've said is basically, we need to find something that has the cachet of Irwindale. And that's going to be really difficult to do while at the same time kind of maintaining the same travel schedule that the teams are used to. If we get to Salt Lake and then all of a sudden, we have to cross country, that's going to not really make teams super excited about that. So the goal was to be on the West Coast. And then the question is what can we do? What can we build? What can we find that can be of Irwindale status? And, then on top of that, the next layer is what venue that we do in that context, build, design, whatever, rent, can sustain for the long term. And I think that's kind of the real question of, the preparations that we went into at least a year ago when we started looking at this.
Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of factors, right? So, and I think one of them happens to be, you have to make it easy for the teams to, it can't be such a high hurdle. I mean, it could be epic location, but if it's on the other coast, it's going to, realistically make it hard for the teams to travel all the way out there. So there's a lot of things to consider here.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think that's one of the things that's generally overlooked. The teams have a very, unique position in that the way that they try to work with us to strategize their budgets to be efficient is to kind of go in the most efficient, circle around the country that we can without a lot of zigzagging. And that makes a big difference because if you're not talking about, say Formula One budgets where you can throw everybody on commercial planes, and go from, the Middle East to South America back to the Middle East, you've got to be conscientious of that. And so that's always been something that we've tried to do because it does make a big difference. If you've got to throw an extra 3,000-mile trip in there to a team, you're talking about multi-thousands of dollars plus, all of the things that come along with travel and, moving to a venue. So the goal was to be and, end here on the West Coast, just like we would have with Irwindale, not just for that, but also because, Southern California is basically our home. It's where we have our largest event right now with Long Beach. Irwindale and Long Beach have always been kind of like friendly competitors to each other in a weird kind of event sense. And it's been nice to bookend the series in Southern California. And so the goal is to do something like that. And we think we have something that is pretty cool. And we're definitely going to keep our mouths shut for a while, though. But we're excited to get it out there once it's time.
All right. Awesome. Looking forward to that. So in 2024, you guys had, obviously 2025 is going to be a big change for you because of Irwindale, but this year you had some format changes. For 20 years, it was the norm to do a single run qualifying. And then this year you introduced this tandem format. How has that influenced competition dynamics? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that is really important to mention on that topic is, the game kind of changed for us when we decided that part of the pyramid structure was not there. And what I mean by that is, we essentially had drivers that were going from pro-am to pro. And then we created Pro 2, which was kind of a stepping stone. And that turned into Pro Spec, which is a philosophically slightly different series than Pro 2. And obviously you can kind of see it in the name. But what that did is it really constrained our ability to be able to focus on a singular series at any given round. And, we do 4 Pro Spec rounds. So those rounds need to be consistent with what we do at traditional pro-only rounds. And what that means is that, you only have so much time in the day, whether it's just a daytime event or whether it's an event that has a sound ordinance at night. And so we had been operating with a modified version of the traditional qualifying for a number of years. You mentioned single run qualifying. That was adapted from the 2 non-consecutive runs that kind of have come out of, traditional drifting and what we've been doing for a long time. And we've been playing with, and kind of tinkering with that concept for some time. And we never really felt that we nailed it. And, what we were seeing and hearing from drivers is that because of the single run, the ability and the need or the want to kind of push at 100% to get that number 1 qualifying spot was attenuated, because it was really, really bad if you fell down. And, we tried, adding points and doing a lot of other things, and we just didn't really feel like it was hitting. So when we got to season 21, we started, kind of talking to the teams along the way in season 19, like, everybody hates qualifying, for lack of a better term. And, it's very, very long. It can run 3.5, 4 hours, which, for broadcasts and things like that, and for numbers is great. But if we're looking for a long-term solution to be able to manage 2 series at the same venue, it's a bit challenging. So we kind of turned things on its head and said, well, how can we take a concept that still preserves the essence of drifting and the best part of drifting that we think, the tandem drifting, and then move into kind of like this new generation, season 21 and on, with a radically new concept. And so that's how we came up with this all tandem format. And what we kind of saw from that is that, our time to run shrank pretty dramatically. And, almost in some instances too much. We had broadcasts sometimes that were running, an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half. And we want to be in that kind of like that 2-hour range, for what we call seating. And so, we're going to modify that for this year. But I think overall, in the first half of the season, particularly on the pro side, was some of the best drifting that we saw in seating, but not just in seating, even relative to the main competition, because a lot of these guys that were unranked international drivers had to come in and go through that gauntlet, so to speak, and participate in that. And so there's some rounds where, whether it's Connor Shanahan or Adam LZ or Manoa, put on some of the most insane drifting I think that we've seen. And it was in the context of not the finals, not the top 32. And so we felt we really had something there. As we got through the season, what we kind of found is that, there are some things that we need to adjust and to tweak to make seating better, and also to ensure that we have a full top 32. So we're going to be doing that in the off season. We're already kind of working on that, but we do feel that it's a concept that we want to stick with for a while. And I kind of told the teams that I don't want to turn back from this after year 1 if we don't like it. I think the idea philosophically of having all tandem drifting feels better than single run qualifying, because you can't have 2-run qualifying in a 2 championship weekend. It just doesn't work from a time perspective and with the number of athletes that we have. So the first year is definitely a learning experience, certainly some highs, some areas to modify, but overall, I think it's a good change for the future.
You just mentioned, and maybe some of these international athletes that are coming into the sport. I mean, what, compared to like, other motorsports that we're talking about during Race Industry Week, for example. What's the difference between traditional motorsports and the entry point into, drifting and Formula Drift? Like how does one like come up the ladder to make it to the Pro Series?
I mean, for me, I wrote a paper actually called The Value Proposition of Formula Drift. And it was something that I had been working on for a number of months because I'd been trying to think about how to explain in a detailed way why Formula Drift is a good value proposition for X entities. And one of the things that has always stood out to me that I felt needed to be underlined in that paper was the fact that the barrier to entry for FD in particular, but even drifting generally, is relatively low. And that's not just for traditional motorsports in comparison. I mean, that's all of sports, right? If I woke up tomorrow and wanted to be a professional baseball player, I couldn't do it. But if I was motivated enough to go and build a car and go to Pro-Am and, win a Pro-Am championship, which would be basically, being a leader after 3 rounds. This is how we kind of function our Pro-Ams. I could get to Pro Spec. And if I'm in Pro Spec and I get to top 3, I could go to Pro. So from a logical perspective, you could literally be a pro driver in 2 years. And we do see some athletes do something akin to that. Now, obviously, they've been practicing for a while. They've taken, lessons from other athletes about how to prepare their programs and driving and all that kind of stuff. But strictly, if you're just looking at the steps, you're talking about 1 year in Pro-Am, 1 year in Pro Spec, and then you're in Pro if you were to do it in that way. Now, I don't necessarily advocate for that, but it's just, it underlines the way in which drifting is much more accessible to the average competitor than most of traditional sports, not even motorsports, most of traditional sports. So that's something that I've always found has been very appealing, particularly because the average driver that's interested in drifting is not going to be a driver that comes from a high income household. We do have some of those, of course. Many of these athletes are self-funded. They're coming at it from a passion perspective. They see that I can scrape together an initial budget to get going. I can focus on the things that are important, like developing my profile on social media and things like that. And then all of a sudden, I've got a name and I'm talking to sponsors and I'm learning how to build a program. And the way in which you become a professional athlete relative to other sports is quite dramatic.
Yeah, you mentioned social media profile. How important is that, compared to 20 years ago when, you guys started and there was no social media at that point? Now you're having guys like Adam LZ who, that come in and they have this huge following. A lot of these guys already have an audience. What do you think about that? How has that affected you guys or, worked in your favor or not?
Well, I mean, it's fundamental to the sport. If you go back to 2009 and say when Facebook started kind of blowing up, there's a 1-to-1 correlation with the growth and the explosion of social media and the line that drifting follows as well. So, I can remember a story. We were at Road Atlanta, and I forget the streaming service that we used, but we had a 1 camera. One of our sound guys said, "Hey, would you mind if I set up a camera and put a stream out?" And at that time, we had no clue what that meant. And he's like, "Hey, check this out. There's 10,000 people watching." And we were like, "What the heck?" And at that moment, I realized that the digitization and the social media aspect of this sport, because it had been very much like an underground kind of cool kid sport. And then when social media came out, it kind of popped in those sectors. And social media has become the major driver for most of the back-end funding mechanisms for not just the series, but also for athletes. Now, there's a lot more to it than that, but that is if we had 5 pillars, that's one of them.
Yeah. Ustream or something like that, right?
Yeah. I think it was Ustream actually.
Yeah. I'm dating myself totally.
That was Daryl,
So
by the way.
what's that?
That was
Oh,
Daryl that did that.
It's
Yeah.
Daryl.
Yeah.
Shout out to Bell One. So you said 5 pillars. So what are the 5 pillars then?
I mean, I think, if we're talking about marketing pillars, social media is certainly one of them.
Mhm.
But I think if we're talking about general pillars that kind of are emblematic of the sport, you're talking about something. One pillar would be that drifting is very synonymous and speaks to a specific and exclusive demographic that we generally don't see in motorsports. And that I think that motorsports as at large should want to try and access. I mean, there is not really a sport out there, a motorsport out there, that can claim that their primary audience is, 16 to 30
Yeah.
and globally based. The other one is that streaming is such a huge aspect of what we do. And while that's in the category of social media, I think it's distinct because the streaming part of things and the derivative content that comes from that is a huge part of what drives the sport on any given weekend, but also as it amplifies after an event. I mean, it's just something that has been synonymous with what we do. And while we do and have had many different television programs, and we currently broadcast live on MAV TV, which is amazing because most television networks would not take a live programming where you could say, we might finish in 2 hours, we might finish in 4 hours, which is one of the reasons for kind of the new format as well. That has just become something that's been so important to the brand. So, and then I think, from that is the fact that all of the stuff that we shoot and all of the access that we give to not just media people, but to athletes is under what's called a shared rights model. So, if I'm Lewis Hamilton and I go into F1, and Liberty is doing, in my opinion, has done a much better job of this than the previous iteration. If I go into the F1 paddock, it's going to be very difficult for me to extract content for my fans. There's a lot of limitations that are there. With Formula Drift, we are the exact inverse. We are saying, look, we are not beholden to a network with a licensing program. And that means that we are not restricted by what we can do with our content. And so therefore, we're going to go to the absolute extreme and say, you can not only film at our event and distribute content, we will give you everything that we shoot as well. And we provide you with all of your competition clips because we want you to go out and create the firestorm of engagement from your competition and what occurs. And so, that's probably 4 of the 5 pillars, but that is the media rights part of it is something that doesn't really get spoken about a lot because the athletes that have grown up in this sport have kind of gotten used to that without knowing what it is per se. But those that understand it, when you look at the relative comparisons to traditional sports and motorsports and things like that, understand its power. I think it has been, if not the main driver, one of the primary drivers of why the sport has become so popular. Because we are not shielding ourselves or having to protect a network or a broadcasting company that's paying us a large rights fee. Now, if we ever get to that, if that opportunity ever exists, it's going to be a very dramatic shift and change because so much of the programs within Formula Drift and the way that drivers are monetizing is based on that fact. Yeah. So, that is something that has become really important in just the overall general development of driver programs, but also the way that Formula Drift works with teams to make sure that the sport is getting as much reach as possible.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, I think that was one of the biggest differences between you and, Japanese drift series. When the Japanese drift series came, they didn't have TV rights, but they had DVD rights. So they were still restricted in terms of what a driver could shoot or even what the media could shoot. But, Formula Drift was so open, and that's why, I was able to do things with Dai, without practically, no restrictions. So I totally agree with that. I mean, with the growth of Formula Drift and social media, I mean, one-to-one, that's a really great point and an interesting one. What's the so everything probably hasn't been, we're starting to run out of time. Lastly, like 21 years, what has been like the biggest challenges that you guys have faced so far and had to overcome to get to this point?
I think about that a lot, actually, and it kind of comes in two parts. I'll try to be brief if we're limited on time. I drifting in general, but Formula Drift, because it's been the primary motorsport in the United States, has always kind of been a redheaded stepchild of motorsports. And in a certain sense, we've kind of stopped trying to correct that, if that makes sense. We have an identity. We lean into that identity, and we're not afraid or embarrassed to do that. And we don't need to be accepted by mainstream motorsports because we're not a point A to point B, racing series. We have a unique identity that we try to promote and lean into, and that's something that I think we need to do. The other thing is, when I came on to this position, it was really challenging to try and understand where we needed to go in the medium term. The short term was understandable. I was taking the pass from Jim and we were getting going. But in the medium term, it was like, where do we want to be in 5 years? And so we had to spend a lot of time thinking about the identity that I just spoke about and how that relates to a multi-year plan. And, I don't need to unpack that for you, but that part in where we go in the future is always challenging because just the general nature of motorsports and entertainment and the social environment is constantly an evolving state.
Yeah, well, I see the timekeeper guys now.
Yeah.
Good to see you guys. Ryan, thanks for joining us. Congratulations on 21 successful seasons and more to come. Wishing you the best. And you're going to be at PRI?
I will be at PRI. Yeah, thank you
right.
so much. I appreciate the opportunity. I always enjoy doing this with you guys.
EPARTRADE is a digital platform that we've created basically to make life easier in the business community of auto racing.
EPARTRADE, there is no e-commerce. It's literally a connection just like at a trade show. So now, any time of the year, a buyer could reach out to a supplier.
When you see a product that you're interested in, all you need to do is click on request more information, and then from there it is forwarded directly to the buyer or to the supplier.
EPARTRADE really eliminates having to travel, closing down your shop. Now you have a place to showcase globally your racing product and technology.
Looking for a quick fix of motorsports news? The Speed Sport Daily is what you need. It's a free racing newsletter delivered directly to your email every day. We'll cover the winners and the losers and tell you who's making news off the track. It's NASCAR, NHRA, World of Outlaw, IndyCar, and so much more. Go to speedsport.com today and get signed up for America's free racing newsletter and get your daily motorsports fix. The Speed Sport Daily.
Land speed record holder George Poteet's Speed Demon rocketed 481 miles per hour at the Bonneville Salt Flats. You don't go that fast without ARP fasteners.
There is no way that we could go the speed that we've gone, the number of times we've gone, with a lesser quality bolt than ARP supplies to us. And we absolutely wouldn't be where we were today if it weren't for ARP.
When failure is not an option, it's ARP-bolts.com.
We're Performance Plus Global Logistics. Our team of dedicated performance industry and logistics experts get valuable cars and components to the track on time in top condition. We provide expedited logistics solutions for the performance industry using direct routes instead of deferred options, and communicate all necessary information to the appropriate resources to meet regulations and ensure a smooth transit and secure delivery, both domestically and internationally. And we exceed customer expectations by providing best-in-class service with an efficient and cost-effective system in place. Contact us today to book your next shipment.
Scott Lewis & Associates, the sales, marketing, and branding specialist for the automotive performance industry since 1988. We get our manufacturers on track by opening an extensive distribution network, providing product training to sales staff, creating fully integrated sales and marketing strategies, building successful industry partnerships, attending trade shows, events, and races, offering first-class support to customers. SLAI delivers solutions that win you sales. To get in touch with an SLAI representative, call 516-378-6100. Go to scottlewisinc.com or email info@scottlewisinc.com.
With roots in the Midwest that date back well before the Model T, Fifth Third Bank has a long history of serving the needs of automotive companies. While much has changed over the years, our passion for helping businesses put cars on the road and on the track has not. Today, we are more committed than ever as a member of SEMA, a founding member of PRI, and a sponsor of multiple race teams across several racing series.
For over a decade, Fifth Third Bank has been a staunch supporter of our industry and a great partner for many companies in the motorsports field.
Our business has been growing extremely fast, and really we could not be where we are today without Fifth Third. They provided amazing strategic advice, the capital we need to support our phases of growth.
They are true partners for me now, and what they do with their involvement in motorsports is untouched in this community.
Where can we take your business? Fifth Third Bank.
You work as hard as your truck, and you have no time for downtime. That's why more truck owners trust Blue Def, America's #1 diesel exhaust fluid brand. Each batch is guaranteed pure, so you can avoid costly repairs caused by inferior DEF. Demand America's best for your truck. Blue Def and Blue Def Platinum. Put trust in your truck.
When it comes to pushing the limits of performance, the pros know there's no room for compromise. At Crower Cams, we don't just engineer camshafts and valve train components, we redefine what power means. Since 1955, Crower Cams has been the name trusted by racers, engine builders, and gearheads around the globe. Whether you're building a street machine, a dragster, or a track car, Crower Cams provides the muscle you need to dominate. And with Crower, victory is within your reach.
For over 25 years, Wisconsin-based C-Tech Manufacturing has been engineering and manufacturing the toughest, most accessible aluminum tool drawers, cabinets, carts, and tactical storage solutions for America's hardest working professionals. Whatever you need to store and however you need to store it, put your trust in C-Tech Manufacturing. We build it better. Visit our new website at ctechmanufacturing.com or give us a call at 715-355-8842.
If you're watching this video, you might be wondering, What is WPC? WPC is a surface treatment designed to reduce friction and increase the strength of metal parts. As much as it might seem like a coating, WPC is actually a surface treatment. Think of it like shot painting, but the media is much finer, like talc. So what you're left with is a super hard, smooth surface that actually has some proprietary dry lubricants embedded within it. For more information, visit WPCtreatment.com.